And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Payload down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange!
125! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
The methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Hello everybody, we're back bringing you live views of Starbase and as always doing our best to answer any questions which you may have. Just a little Starbase update for you all as we get ready for the OFT. It's not just my voice you'll be treated to. Alongside me in the comms box we have Ian Atkinson. Hey Ian, how you doing?
I'm doing great, getting excited, more and more excited every day as we get closer and closer to the orbital flight. So you could say I'm doing pretty great right now, Ryan.
Sounds great. And we also have a Sawyer with us. How you doing, Sawyer?
I'm doing great. Love seeing all the 5x5s in chat. And I do want to say we had the Falcon heavy static fire today. And now the hype for the Starship is pretty heavy right now, too.
Everything is building up. My name's Ryan Caton. I'll be your host for this evening as we get into hopefully the sky turning a little bit more orange as we get towards the Texan night. But of course, if you have any questions for us, make sure to tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight. We'll bring them into the queue and do our best to answer them. So basically what we're looking at here right now, very similar view to yesterday. We've got ship 24 destacked. We're waiting for the FTS, the flight termination system to be armed ahead of flight. No official word from the FAA just yet. But Sawyer, I don't know if you saw, there's been a little bit of an update with the road closure from Cameron County.
Yes, I believe we have that linked in somewhere. So essentially, we've got the dates locked out there for space flight activities, as they labeled it, quote unquote, for April 17th, 2023, between 12 a.m. and 2 p.m. Central, with backup dates the 18th and the 19th at the same time.
It's very interesting. I have the PDF open in front of me, and it does say this notice is subject to approval of a flight activity license by the FAA if the closure is to be used for a launch. So this notice is kind of piggybacking off a potential FAA launch license should it come, and we're about 7 p.m. Eastern now, which is kind of where the FAA is based. So we're not expecting anything from the FAA today. There's still tomorrow. We have the Friday, which is a weekday that they'll be working. So yeah, we're still waiting for that FAA launch license. Now, Ian, I don't know if have you been keeping up with this, because this is very exciting. Do we know when the launch license could potentially be coming in anytime soon?
Yes. Now, unfortunately, we don't really have insight onto the FAA's the licensing process. It's pretty much behind closed doors. However, I think the fact that they've published the road closures today, especially that clause that you mentioned, that it's reliant on the launch license being approved, that makes me feel like SpaceX knows the launch license is coming, be it tomorrow, maybe over the weekend. I don't know if the FAA really operates over the weekend, but maybe it's kind of a special scenario for them. But that makes me feel that SpaceX is extremely confident in getting their launch license probably tomorrow or at some point before flight. I don't really see them going ahead with a road closure unless they just want to get super ahead of the process, just get that done and done. But to me, that screams that they're confident that a launch license is coming. So I would keep your eyes open tomorrow, possibly over the weekend if it doesn't come tomorrow, but that really shows confidence to me, and that makes me much more optimistic for a potential flight Monday.
Sounds good. We've got a couple questions coming in now, especially about the wet dress rehearsal, which was kind of hinted by SpaceX official on Twitter for this week, but we're now to Thursday, nothing's happened. Brian asking, is SpaceX skipping the wet dress rehearsal then? And yeah, that's pretty much been confirmed that we're going straight into the launch. SpaceX already has so much test data, and Sawyer, there's not really anything else that they'd need to do, is there?
In terms of waiting for it, no. It's they've done a bunch of wet dress rehearsals. We saw the previous static fire campaign ending with the 31 of 33 engines firing. I mean, that's it. I guess there's the potential of maybe they could do testing if they don't get the license in those couple days, because it does say in there that if they don't go on that first day, they can use the other days for planned spaceflight activities. It's a little more on the vague side, so maybe then, but as of right now, there's no official word or no plan to do any more wet dress rehearsals. Just get ready to full send it.
Full send it indeed. It's going to be very, very, very exciting. The hype is building. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. I don't want to get too excited because I want to prepare for Scrubs, but I'm also getting very, very excited about what's about to come. We have a question here from Israel. How does the amount of pre-flight testing, hops, static fires, spin primes, etc. for Starship compare to other first flights of rockets? Now, kind of thinking a bit historically about this, Ian, do you have any insight on the testing timeline for Starship compared to previous like US vehicles from around the world, stuff like that?
Yeah, so thinking back to like the Saturn V and the space shuttle, I do see a lot of comparisons and a lot of similarities here. Now, the Saturn V specifically, I think that can be kind of directly compared here, both where, heavy lift rockets used for crude exploration to deep space. They did have ground test articles of the first stage, of the second stage, of everything on the Saturn V. They did the same with Starship and Super Heavy. Now, a comparison to the space shuttle that I see here, before they did the first all-up flight of the space shuttle, STS-1, they did do the approach and landing tests with Enterprise, which at that point was basically a sort of prototype space shuttle. It couldn't go to space, but it can get a lot of the stuff done that they needed to. That kind of draws some similarities in my mind to the hops that Israel here is talking about. So I do see some comparisons there, and I think that overall, SpaceX is really riding on a lot of data. There's no real shortage of data here. They've got the static fires, the wet dress rehearsals. They've done hop tests of these vehicles. So they already have a bit of data on how Starship will perform in flight. So they have a good bit of data behind them, and they seem ready and prepared, in my mind, to go ahead with the full stack flight test.
And if I may add on to that, because, me and shuttle, uh, parts of the shuttle were
Bingo
basically
cards.
Yup. I mean, basically, there was all the components were tested individually. You had the RS-25s, the main engines, tested down at Stennis. You had the solid rocket motor segments being tested out in Utah and Promontory. And then in the end, you still had the TCDT, which is basically a dry dress rehearsal leading up to pretty much each of the launches with the crew and all the mission controllers and everything. So I'd say it's about in line with what we're used to seeing for other vehicles. It's just this is a lot more public than we're used to seeing from back in the old days.
hmm hmm We also
Yes,
have a. Oh, go on, Ian.
I was just going to add real quick. That's a good point, Sawyer. This is a lot more public than we've ever seen before. Going back much more recently than the shuttle or the Saturn V, the Falcon 9 test campaign, which took place at McGregor, Texas, and on the pad at Cape Canaveral, Florida, that's behind much more closed doors, kind of quote unquote, because you can't get up close to the pad at Cape Canaveral. There's no, unfortunately, there's really no NSF cameras, or there were no NSF cameras at Cape Canaveral at that time. So a lot of that was happening behind closed doors. But we have an excellent, excellent opportunity here. We've been able to follow the entire Starship test program up until this point, from the initial prototypes to prototypes failing to the hop tests, static fires, wet dress rehearsals, cryogenic proofing, stuff we normally really don't get to see for rockets. So this has been a great kind of peek behind the closed doors at SpaceX to see what they're doing and what their mantra is for their test campaign here of Starship. So it's been an excellent opportunity to see all of this up close and personal.
I'd also just add when McGregor Live spooled up for the first time, we started seeing like Raptor failures and stuff like that. They weren't new things, they'd already been happening. We just hadn't seen them before. So people were acting like these were a big deal, but no, they were happening. We just didn't have eyes on them before. I'm just going to quickly run through some of the contributions that we've been getting. First of all,
And
Bob,
if I
thanks
could
for
point out,
coming.
oh,
Go
really
on, Sawyer.
quickly before we do that, while we're talking about McGregor, don't forget we have McGregor Live where you can watch all of these tests 24/7.
Yes, the Raptor engines that are on these vehicles here, you can watch them get tested literally 24/7 anytime that you want on McGregor Live. It's so much fun to watch.
Thanks to Bob for the becoming a launch director member. That's quite high up there. We also have $5 from Musical Wolves asking, will Super Heavy require a re-entry license or just S24? Now, I don't think that there are separate launch and landing licenses issued by the FAA. And Ship 24 is just kind of going to be face palming, as I'm starting to call it, the Pacific Ocean near Hawaii. There are not Mars, so notices to mariners. So basically, they go out to people who sail boats saying, hey, there's some stuff happening here, please don't get in the way and cause a range violation. But I don't believe that there is a licensing process for landings and recoveries just like there is for launches, unless I'm wrong on that, Sawyer.
I guess. Again, a lot of it will depend on the exact wording in the launch license, and just clearance for specific parts of the area. Like you said, the not Mars, and then all of the air clearances as well, the NOTAMs that they put out. So I believe that's the case.
I would think so. I think the Note Mars we've already seen, they have parts of the Gulf of Mexico closed off for the launch. They have parts northwest of Hawaii closed off for the reentry. And of course, Super Heavy is going to be landing in the Gulf. Starship, if it makes it to reentry, will land next in the Pacific Ocean near Hawaii. I don't know if that falls under a launch license. I've never heard of a reentry license, so if it does need a license, it would fall under the launch license. But we do have the Note Mars, the NOTAMs already kind of prepared for the reentry of the vehicles.
Patrick here with a store message saying good luck to Starship. I think we'll all be wishing SpaceX luck over the next few weeks as we get closer to the launch. We also have Andrew with a store message saying shut up and take my money. Telstar, thanks for the super chat, asking, do you think that SpaceX would want to do a daytime launch to get the best views? Well, the road closures and the NOTAMs and the not Mars, they're all kind of tying into a morning launch, I believe, Ian.
Yes, we've seen their kind of estimated T0 should be around 8 a.m. Central Time, so just a few hours after sunrise, and it extends until around noon, it seems like. You can see actually the road closures right there. Now the roads are going to close around midnight at the beach as well. It's going to be closed until 2 p.m. Now that is quite a long lead time and a few hours after their possible window there. We do know the window based on the NOTAMs and the NOTMARS. They begin about just a little bit before 8 a.m. Central Time and end just a little after noon Central Time. So we know that their test window is 8 to 12 those days. So it does seem like they really do want to go ahead with a daylight launch. Like this person here is asking, it would provide the best views. And of course, if anything went wrong, which of course we hope it does not, but it's not unlikely that something goes wrong, you want to get some good camera views so you figure out what happened, what broke, and how you can go ahead fixing it. If it happened at night and something happened, it would still be possible to figure out what happened, but it would make it a lot harder to not have physical camera views of the launch.
And I will just add that there is precedent for Starship flights happening with reduced visibility. SN11 was pretty much destroyed in mid-air by the flight termination system, with parts raining down across the countryside, and that was with very, very thick fog. So it's not like there isn't precedent for that. However, for the purpose of an integrated orbital Starship flight test, whatever it's called, you want to have the best views, and also for our purpose of bringing you live coverage of this incredible event, we also want good views as well.
Also of
Thanks
note,
to
too,
Go
is
on,
with
Sawyer.
the timing of all of these, is that keep in mind that you're closing airspaces all across the U.S. and essentially the globe at parts of it. You're blocking off waterways, which you have the port of Brownsville right there, which is a big port. So a lot of these waters are going to have to be closed off. So you don't want to take the full 6 to 8 hour day while it's light out to do it. You find somewhere where it's not as busy of a time for your test flight here. Like they're doing, I believe, 7 to 10 a.m. is the window central time per Alex in the back channel. So,
Yes.
not in the busiest of times when they have to close everything.
And yes, I'd like to correct myself on that. Alex did correct me in the back channel. The launch time is the launch window is from 7 to 10 a.m. on the 3 days we just listed. So a quick correction there.
Yep, and thanks to David for becoming a Capcom member. That means you get access to the Discord server, any level Capcom and above. We also have a $50 super chat from Roseanne asking the That's an interesting message, but okay, moving on. We have Thomas asking, just recently got a tattoo of the Falcon Heavy on my forearm. It's absolutely awesome that once Starship launches, I'm getting a tattoo of that. That's awesome. So Sawyer mentions it at the
very
top of the
nice.
stream. Falcon Heavy static firing. We could have Starship and Falcon Heavy launching in the same week, which
And
is
a
just
Starlink too.
and a Starlink. Oh, but we get we get Starlinks all the
But
time.
still, you
Star
would have in a row,
Yeah.
you would have every single one of SpaceX's vehicles launching. You would have a Starship on Monday, Falcon Heavy Tuesday, Falcon 9 Wednesday. Literally the whole fleet right
Wow.
now in 3 days.
Oh, that makes me wonder then
So
if Starship
yeah,
does
but
get delayed. Sorry, Ryan.
Carry on, Ian.
I was going to say, it makes me wonder if Starship gets delayed to say Tuesday or Wednesday. Would that prompt SpaceX to delay Falcon Heavy or Falcon 9? I assume it wouldn't have precedence over the Falcon Heavy mission, given that's a customer flight and Starship is not. But I wonder if there would kind of be a sort of, we need to give priority to one mission over the other. We don't have enough assets, but I
The
guess
hours
we'll
are
have to wait
also
and see.
different too. So, I mean, the flight, the 50-ish minute window opens around 7:38 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday for Falcon Heavy. And keep in mind, most of these closures are from 12 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central Time. That still gives them plenty of time to do their operations at Starship and still continue their operations at the Cape.
Very true.
I also just note that the Starship operations are controlled from Boca itself. They're not from Hawthorne. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes. It seems that they are
So
operated right now out of the Stargate building. However, given that the
yeah.
exclusion zone is going to be further, there's likely a second mission control beyond the exclusion zone.
So if Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have launch control at the Cape, and they also have mission control at Hawthorne. If the Starship launch control is a separate thing entirely from then, surely they won't interfere with each other. I'm just trying to think in terms of Starship operations compared to Falcon operations. If they had to use the same mission control room, surely that the customer flights would take precedent over the Starship test flights. But if they're separated, it doesn't. I don't see why they would need to completely separate the flights from not overlapping from each other. I'm just trying to think in that way, but that's just like completely speculation for my brain. So there's no facts or figures backing that up at all. If I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts about trying to launch Starship with Falcon operations at the same time, because it's not like Falcon operations are not happening. They're going on average about once a week at the moment. So it's an incredible cadence, which I guess SpaceX could have worked around that. I don't know, Sawyer, would you think SpaceX would have already tried to build up operations that mean that you can launch Starship and Falcon at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there is a little bit of shared hardware with the Florida launches and Starbase with the tracking antennas that they have there, but otherwise, again, it's as similar as they are. They're two completely different rockets running completely different systems. So you've got one team that's specifically working Falcon Heavy only, and one team that's specifically working Starship only. And I'm sure there's a little bit of crossover, but that way the Starship team can focus on their readiness for the 17th, and then the people in the Cape can get ready for Falcon Heavy on the 18th and Starlink on the 19th.
We also have $20 from Steph B. Thank you very much for that. And a couple of gifted memberships here. One red team from Nikki. Thanks for that. If you received that, make sure to thank Nikki. And one from Jim. We also have a super chat question from Sylar saying, if it were to launch on Monday, what time do you think it would be? Keep up the great work. Well, thanks for that, Sylar. We did mention earlier the launch window, which is 1200 UTC until 1505. So a 3-hour window there. I forgot what that is in Central. My brain's trying to
7
calculate
to 10
it now.
a.m. local time in
Thanks,
Texas.
Sawyer. Thanks, Sawyer. So yeah, that is the time which is being currently targeted for the launch window. We also have a red team membership being gifted from We Will Rocket You. Thank you very much. And Alex, who's upgraded to the red team level. Right, let's get into some more ordinary questions now. You don't have to contribute financially in order to ask a question. Just tag us by putting at NASASpaceflight in chat. That'll come into the queue and we'll be able to answer them with Anis asking, should I book my flight yet? Now, this is a pretty what's the word, like volatile topic, because we don't know if it's going Monday or not. So it just depends how much leeway you'll be able to have to cancel a flight and reschedule your plans personally. So, Ian, do you think, would you be booking flights yet to come see Starship? What's your kind of opinion on that?
So unfortunately, since I'm in college, I cannot skip a week of class to go see Starship as much as I want to. Um, if I was going to, I would say right now might be a safe time to book a flight. Again, safe is really a subjective word in that sense. Like we've said so many times in this webcast, Monday is not certain. They have alternate dates on Tuesday and Wednesday, and of course they can probably get further ones Thursday, Friday, and so on. Um, I would say now is probably about the safest time. Maybe you could wait a day or two if you want to be even safer with the launch license stuff. But keep in mind, this is a very fluid test program. They could come out all of a sudden and say, hey, we've had an issue. We need to delay till Friday or something. You never know. So if I were going, this is not a bad time, but make sure you're down there for a significant amount of time that you take into account scrubs and delays and things like that. So
Mhm.
I apologize
Which
for not giving a straight answer, but that's really the best we can give in this sense.
the other thing
Yeah.
might be getting a hotel as well. There's a chance that a lot of those are going to be sold out. I know we've got cameras up on the Margaritaville Hotel now, and there's some great views from there. But yeah, that might be the biggest issue, honestly. And to answer your question, I would have been down there probably now or the next couple days if I wasn't going to be the boots slash wheels on the ground for Falcon Heavy.
Yeah, it's personally, I'm a lot further away than you two are, being living in the UK. So it's a bit more of a, for me, it would be a much longer trek to get to Starbase, and there would be connections and all kind of a logistical nightmare involved trying to get there with such a short turnaround. So I'm not even sure if I was able to, I would not probably even be contemplating it. Well, I'll just watch the live feed from NSF anyway. Uh, what is the weather looking like for Monday? Johnny Mac asking that. And this isn't covered by the Eastern Range. So for Cape launches, we get a weather forecast from the 45th Space Launch Delta 45, who are part of the Space Force, who basically control all of the basically control Cape Canaveral. But Sawyer, do we know if you have any kind of other weather forecasting services that are looking straight at this launch, or is we just going to have to go on like just look online for what the weather's going to be like at the beach?
I mean, I'm sure that they have a dedicated team that's literally just there looking at the weather and things like that. And the 45th Space Wing will be helping out just in range aspects as opposed to weather aspects as they get near the Gulf, as that's their territory. But otherwise, your best bet is NOAA will likely have information that they can access, which is saying Monday is currently sunny with a high near 77, winds east northeast 7 to 16 miles an hour, gusting to 23. Now I'll send it over to you with the story about cute puppies or the sports update.
NSF's weather correspondent, Sawyer, thanks. Alex, with a question about the ship recovery. What is the reason for no landing burn attempt for the ship? I've heard theories that it might be able to make the ship sink on splashdown, but why isn't that a problem for B7 also? Now, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring on the speculation with this. Ship is quite big. Ship will be landing very far away from Starbase. B7 coming in for a soft splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico, assuming that it stays intact pretty much. Surely they'd be able to tow that back into port, right? I know it's huge. This is like what, 70 meters tall? This is big, but surely they could tow it back into shore somehow, Sawyer. Like it's huge, but surely they could do that, right?
Maybe. I mean, you'd need a heck of a barge. Think of it right now for all of the for all the drone ship landings. You know, you've got the ASDSs. You've got, of course, I Still Love You on the West Coast, and Just Read the Instructions and Shortfall of Gravitas on the East Coast. Those just barely fit. It seems like the Falcon 9 landings, or center core or side cores, depending on the mission. But with this, it is big, very, very big, and very, very wide. So it would be quite the effort, I think, to get it out there, especially if you're talking, I don't know, say 200, 300 miles off the coast of Hawaii to go that far back with this giant booster. I think it might make sense to just, say goodbye to it, and someone 50 years from now can go searching for it like they did for the F1s.
Yeah, so Ship 24 face palming, smacking into the Pacific Ocean and turning into a million pieces makes a much more sense for ship recovery than trying to soft splash down, which is why that is what they're going to be going with, Alex. Hopefully that answers your question. Antworsk asking if they launch in the morning, like the launch window suggests, which is what they're kind of legally bound to do, will Starship re-enter in the dark? It would be great view. It would be a great view seeing all the plasma going around the ship. Now, this is going to be kind of dependent on where you're looking at it from, because as the sun rises over the horizon around Earth, the ship is going to take about 90 minutes to get around. So you need to take the launch time, add 90 minutes, then change time zone to like Hawaii time. It's just, Ian, do you think it'll be dark in Hawaii? Will it depend on what time it'll launch? Because it's 7 a.m. Central, which is, I don't know what the Hawaii offset is. Do you know what the Hawaii offset is?
I believe it's 5 hours behind Eastern, so 4 behind Central, so that would be about 3 a.m. Add 90 minutes to that, about 4:30, so that is plenty before sunrise, maybe getting into a little bit of twilight there. I think it should be pretty visible. Definitely more visible further west, although I'm sure no one's really going to be out there. I think it should be visible, but that is, of course, A, if it's not cloudy out, and B, if they go at the opening of the launch window. If they go closer to, say, 10 a.m., then you're getting into dawn at Hawaii or even past sunrise. I think it still would be visible, but definitely not as spectacular as it would be in the dark. You definitely will see something during the day re-entering, but it'll be a bit harder to spot, and it will be, not as phenomenal in the sky as it would be at night.
And for people who want
I'm
to try and figure out their own time zones, the clock is just about to change on the screen, so it'll officially be 1:29 p.m. now, Hubble Space Telescope. I mean, Hawaii Standard Time. But yeah, so that we
the
can do the calculations to figure out what your time zone is in relation.
there
I
you go.
just got that joke, Sawyer. Oh, come on. HST.
We have EST,
Boo.
EDT. They have HST. I couldn't resist.
Where what's the JWST?
Ha ha ha. Clever.
The sunlight coming over the horizon. So when we get the launch, we get the jellyfish effect with the propellants and stuff coming out. Would the height of Starship, say we'll see the shiny side as it kind of comes into the atmosphere at a bit of an angle, do you think that we'll be able to see some reflections of sunlight off the shiny side of Starship as it comes in, with the sun peeking over the horizon before the sunlight can reach the land on Earth, Sawyer? Do you think that could be a possibility, depending when the launch time is, and then add 90 minutes and then all of that jazz?
I don't. Maybe, but I doubt it. Again, a lot of the things with the jellyfishes, you're talking just before sunrise or just after sunset are the ideal times to see it. Give or take
It's a
30,
very
45
specific
minutes.
time.
Yeah, give or take 30, 45 minutes or so. But that's how tight we're talking in terms of the time here. So I would have to check the exact time for sunrise, but I don't think so. Although it would be nice.
Actually, you would not be able to see anything reflecting off the ship because unless something goes terribly wrong, it will be re-entering heat shield first. Going from west to east, the sun comes up in the east, so it would just be reflecting off the black tiles, so not really reflecting at all. Might see a little bit, but it's really not going to be as spectacular as if it was coming off the shiny side. Again, we hope they don't come into shiny side first, because then you're not getting a Starship belly flopping in the Pacific.
You're getting a very melted down version of Starship 24, which I mean, it's anything past max Q is a bonus. I'm going to keep saying it. Getting that far in the flight would be somewhat a success, and getting all of that data. But still, we want to see Ship 24 last as long as possible. Lucas asking, is it known if there will be some payload other than propellant on board Starship? Like we had a wheel of cheese on Falcon 9, we've had a cherry red Tesla Roadster on Falcon Heavy. Sawyer, do we think there's going to be any secret kind of special payload on board Starship for the orbital integrated Starship flight test?
I mean, I would hope so. It would be really cool. I'm sure there's something in there that they're hiding, but like I was joking the other night, is that the dispenser for payloads, even though this one is completely welded shut, is nicknamed the Pez dispenser, basically. So I think they should fill it with Pez, but as of now, there is no official word like there was for Falcon Heavy of what the exact payload will be.
Ian, do you have any thoughts on what they could put in Starship?
See, I don't. If they put something in there, they're not getting it back anyway, so that's for sure. I would think maybe some small mementos from the company, like maybe like we saw with Relativity Flight, they put their first 3D print in there. Maybe SpaceX puts a memento from like the first Falcon 1 flight in there or something. Nothing big because we haven't seen anything. You can't put anything big in there; it would have to fit through the hatch. So it definitely maybe like a small thing of like postcards from employees or something. Nothing big, nothing valuable, that's for sure. Maybe little jokes here and there. And also, this picture is giving me extreme anxiety as someone who's afraid of heights. Oh my god. You could
There
not,
you go.
you could pay me
Humans for
enough.
scale.
Oh.
Very
Also,
high
note
up.
the weather tower on top of the launch tower there.
And
Yeah,
that
going
is
back
the
to the
largest orbital launch tower, I believe, ever built, too. Or at least active
yeah.
right now,
This is
so.
this is one massive structure, and those are looks like I don't know 3, 4, 5 people right on the tippy top right now. It looks as if they're kind of above the pulley system for the chopsticks right at the top of the tower. I do hope they're strapped in somehow because that would be very, very scary for me, who's a kind of okay with heights, but still I wouldn't prefer doing that. Right, let's hit some of the financial contributions that we've been getting from our wonderful viewers. Sylar has become a Red Team member. Thanks very much. We also have the World's Best Tracy gifting a 1 Red Team membership, a $10 blank super chat from Billy. Thanks for that. We also have a Red Team membership being gifted from T. Evans. Thanks very much for that. Trying to get it to go. There we go. We also have a store message from Nick. Let's see what you got. A patch. The patches are very cool. We'll get onto them in a moment. We also have a store message from Courtney saying, love your guys' coverage. A day with a live stream is the best day. Looks like you also got a patch there. And thanks to Zelo, sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, thanks for becoming a PadRap member. Come on. Get in there. Don't know why. There we go. That's now come up. Thanks to Ronald for the 10 USD. We also have a super chat from Roseanne. We have 99 cents from Soccer Genius. Thanks for that. And we're just going to go over to the merch store quickly because we have a restock, ladies and gentlemen, of our patches. They're hot property right now. So if you want to get your hands on a patch, we can show you that. Hopefully, the patches have been restocked. They've come back in. You can get them on T-shirts, and we've had stickers. They haven't run out yet, but we have the proper physical patch that you can sew into things. That's now back on the store. There you go. We've got the little moon star. We've got the little Mars star. The little white and red patches there. We've got the it says Starbase Earth, where the flight's originating from. Starship orbital flight test. Of course, whatever you want to call it. That's what's on the patch. You'll just have to deal with that. We also have the booster, 33 Raptors igniting at the bottom there. A very frosty Booster 7 and Ship 24. And we also have this design on many other items such as t-shirts, hoodies, mugs. We've also got a banner there, a flag if you fancy putting that up on your wall or something like that. So yeah, many patch items that you can purchase at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. We also have our metal prints, can't forget about them. This taken just a little while ago. The ship stacked on top of the booster down at Starbase. We also have that rainbow picture. I do very much like that rainbow picture. The colours popping there. That taken by Nick, I believe. So yeah, there's plenty Starship merchandise and swag that you can get your hands on. That's shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Getting back into the questions here, we have a turnaround question from Stephen. How many scrubs per day can they have? Window looks tight. It's only about 3 hours long, so they're guessing just the one. Ian, do you have any clue how long it will take to get all of the methane and the oxygen re-pumped around in order to try and go again if they scrub? I'd imagine they'll try and aim for the right beginning of that window. So would 3 hours 5 minutes be enough time to get Starship refueled and sent on its way?
Yeah, so we do know, thanks to the timeline SpaceX has published, it'll take around an hour and a half, a little bit above that, to go from zero propellant in the tanks to fully loaded, and I assume somewhere in that range for unloading the propellants. Of course, since we're dealing with super chilled methane and oxygen here, they cannot keep the propellants in the tanks for that long before they start to warm up. They become less dense and you get less performance out of your engine. So you need to cycle the propellant to make sure they're as cold as possible. I think at the absolute best, you can maybe get 2 runs. But we have seen before that if there is an abort, say, at T-minus 10 seconds or something, it's not necessarily the end of the day. They can hold for a little bit. We don't know the exact maximum time they can hold for, but we have seen many times for the static fire tests, for wet dress rehearsals, things like that, and for the hops previously, that they could hold for several minutes as they, fix any issues or double check things. So it's not necessarily the end of the world if they hold, but we don't know their exact kind of like cutoff point as in, okay, we are done for the day.
And like you were mentioning there, I think it also depends on where in the count they encounter the issue. If they can hold at that point, if it's a thing while fueling, they're probably more likely to be able to continue on later in the window. Once you get closer to Raptor ignition, the chances, I feel like, get a little less, but it totally depends on where you are in the countdown, where you are ahead of liftoff, and when to call the scrub, and again, also whether it's human called or computer controlled.
We have an important question, in my opinion, for viewing the re-entry at least. From Costa asking, will the NASA WB-57 support? Is it scheduled now? This is something we talked about in a video, I think about a week ago. My entire sense of time has disappeared with this orbital flight coming up. I think it was about a week ago. A video came out. I think I hosted that one with the WB-57 schedule in it. Now, it's basically the same schedule as it was a week ago. There's an imaging placeholder for this Monday just gone, this Tuesday just gone, for WB-57 926 and 927. You can see that on screen now. This hasn't really been updated, but you can also see for the next few weeks, WB-57 926 is fully scheduled. This schedule is kind of not really updated that often. Sawyer, I don't know if you have any clue on if these NASA planes will be coming. Could this be an old schedule? What's going on with this schedule, Sawyer?
I mean, yeah, they get updated maybe once or twice a month, depending. But essentially, it's a very good chance that it's going to be there. They have tried to be there for all of the tests. There are some where they couldn't because there was an issue with the vehicle, with the airplane, or they had to, go somewhere else for it. But I think it's a very strong chance that means that there will be a WB-57 there. Again, the question is 1 or 2, and would the other one potentially go to Kennedy for heavy? So it's not very clear, but there is a very, very, very strong chance, I would say, that the WB-57 will be there.
It's going to be the views from those planes. They fly so high, it's just incredible views. I believe they were deployed for SLS, is that correct? I think they're out for SLS.
I believe so. I know for sure that with the exception of the last crew return, they are used for all returning Dragon vehicles as well. So as you see it flying through the atmosphere and kind of infrared, that's usually the WB-57.
Some very old planes, but they also have got a lot of life left in them still. Very, very cool assets that NASA has. C6R1S asking, or was that meant to be Ceres? I don't know. Is there a projected flight duration? Now, we're expecting this to take around 90 minutes to get around Earth, but it's not going all the way around Earth, is it, Ian?
Yeah, it's not going all the way around Earth, about 3/4 or so, roughly. Jonathan McDowell, actually on Twitter, Planet4589, he and a few other people did do an analysis based on the trajectory, based on the launch timelines and things like that. They estimated it to be, I believe, around 80 to 85 minutes in length. You can actually see here the exact, the first few minutes in flight. They believe it's around 80 to 85 minutes from liftoff to splashdown in the Pacific. And again, that is dependent on everything going well, including re-entry, all of that. So we'll have to wait and see, but it seems like it's about 80 to 85 minutes in length, so a little under an hour and a half.
And also of note, we have an entire breakdown of this timeline to the minute in one of our latest videos available on the channel, hosted by Ryan, in fact.
Yeah, I'm hosting everything. I mean, yeah, it's been such a busy week. We have a question here from Travis asking, what would happen if at T0, one or two of the 33 engines do not immediately ignite, like the 33 engine static fire? Can they quickly fix each engine's problem mid-flight? Now, I think I'm remembering this correctly. I'll move it on to Ian in a second, but I think the outer ring of Raptors can only be ignited on the pad, and the inner rings can be ignited in flight, but that's only intended for the boost back burn. Ian, I think I've got that right.
Yes, you do have that right. The outer engines, technically the Raptor boosts, although they're more or less the same engines as the Raptor centers in the center, the outer engines are only ignited, spun up and then ignited by ground support equipment. Once the vehicle has left the pad and those engines shut down at main engine cutoff, they cannot be started again no matter what. And that, of course, includes if they shut down early in flight. The center engines, however, like you did say, those can be restarted. Those are hooked up to the COPVs to respin them up for the boost back burn and the landing burns. Now, fixing an engine problem mid-flight is really not a thing in rocketry, unfortunately. The flight is such a quick event. The first stage is burning for about 3 minutes, a little under 3 minutes. And that's not a lot of time to troubleshoot major engine issues, figure out exactly what's happening, and go ahead with restarting. I don't think that's really an engine restart in flight. I don't think that's ever happened before in rocketry. So that's not really a thing here for Starship. I would assume, and I am going to put the big guess warning sticker on here. I would assume if there is any engine issue before liftoff, they abort. I don't really see them going ahead if they lose an engine or two, or an engine or two does not ignite right before liftoff. I do not see them going ahead with launch. This seems like the kind of test where you'd want to have every bit of redundancy on your side, and losing an engine or two before launch is not necessarily a big thing if they continue perfectly through the rest of flight, but that is not a given with a brand new vehicle like this. I don't see them not aborting if an engine fails.
Sawyer, what do you think about before T0 and then after T0 engine abort capabilities?
I mean, it seems like from what we've heard, I believe it was around 6 to 8 would be the maximum number of engines that you'd be able to lose while still continuing to fly, according to, I believe it was Elon that mentioned that at some point. So, again, if it's still held down and not all engines ignite, I don't think they're going to release the hold down things. They'll stay on the ground and see what the issue is and see if maybe they can try again or if they need to stop and go inspect the engines. So I don't think they would go without all 33 engines for this first attempt. Mid-flight, if it goes out, it goes out. That's part of why this is a test flight. And basically, if the engines go out, that basically just means you're going to have to burn longer. So as long as you got the fuel and you've got the power to keep going, it will continue with those few engines out. So it just means a longer flight, basically, if a certain number of them go out.
Yeah. Sorry, I believe earlier you meant the hold down clubs.
No, I like the hold down things better.
The hold down things. They do the same job. They work just as well.
Yeah.
Just going to crank through a few of these financial contributions here. Thanks for the $10 from Anonymous. We also have another super chat here from Ryan. Ryan is a good name. I like that name. Thanks for the $5 from David, and thanks Tracy once again. 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much. If you received one of them, make sure to thank Tracy. Zachary saying, keep up the great work, guys. Thank you very much for that kind compliment. That is a store message, and you got the patch. Not surprised there at all. Mark gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Also Mike gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Thank you very much for those contributions. We had a tip here from Rankley saying, what altitude do the super heavy rockets have to reach to safely fly over land? Can't wait until next week. Sorry, do you have any idea of what the minimum altitude is for flight over land to be kind of accepted? Because if you're flying too low, I could imagine that some international partners could get a little unhappy if you're flying a 70-meter tall booster over them.
I'm not entirely sure, but typically most launch licenses, which again, we don't have one yet for this, but most launch licenses and all of the closures and everything are usually from the ground up to the line of space, which in our case will go with the Kármán line. So I would say probably the Kármán line, aka space, at which point then it'll just continue on its way. That's again, purely speculative, just based off of what I've seen in the past. I don't have an exact answer.
Mm-hmm.
And also, thank you for
Musical.
using the tip feature, by the way, at
Yeah.
tips.nasaspaceflight.com. That way, Google doesn't take its fair share, or lack of fair share, and helps us go directly to supporting us and what you guys love us doing, which we love you guys watching, by the way. So thank you for doing that. And even if you can't support monetarily, a thumbs up goes a long way.
Yeah, just watching our stuff that makes the algorithm go, oh, these people are interesting. Maybe we should promote them more on the homepage. Musical Walls with a $2 super chat saying, will a com blackout for S24 during re-entry happen? Ian, I know we get these with Dragon. We've had them with every vehicle that goes through re-entry in the past. Do we get them for Falcon 9? Because it's the plasma buildup that
Yes.
blocks the communications, correct?
Yes, so when Falcon 9 comes back, the first stage comes back through reentry. A lot of times there is a comms blackout, a plasma blackout. If you watch the telemetry on either the bottom left or bottom right corner of the SpaceX live stream, you'll see they lose the altitude and the velocity numbers for the first stage momentarily. That's because the first stage is going through reentry. It gets a bit of a plasma blackout. Of course, it's not as long or as long as a blackout as you would get during full-on atmospheric reentry like Dragon or Starship will. Um, and yes, to answer the question, Starship will have a plasma blackout. Now, it seems like SpaceX may be trying to kind of avoid that by having Starlink antennas on board Starship. We don't know if there's a Starlink antenna on board Ship 24 exactly. We don't know if that would even work to get through a plasma blackout. But regardless of that, there will be an ordinary comms blackout from Starship. They will not be able to have radio communications with it during reentry if they can't figure that Starlink dish trick out.
And I would guess that there would be one, since we know for a fact Booster 7 does have Starlink dishes or antennas on board. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was some in Ship 24 as well.
Yep.
Yeah, there's little hexagonal tile-looking things on the ship. Are those like kind of like antenna? Do we know what those are, Ian?
I don't believe we know exactly what those are. It's seems pretty likely those would be antennas or something that needs to be protected. So yeah, probably some kind of antenna. Um, I would assume, yeah, probably the antennas on the ship there. One of those might be a Starlink dish, and it would really not shock me since Starship will be coasting for so long and doing quote unquote nothing. Of course, they'll be doing data downlinks and things like that. But
Yeah.
that would be a great opportunity to test out Starlink on Starship. Can you get some data connectivity, get some videos down through Starlink? Because you have your satellites up there, why not put them to use?
hmm Sawyer, I'm also going to talk about shuttle here. My first shuttle reference on
Uh-oh.
LSF.
Ooh.
During the launch of the space shuttle, it did a roll program, so it would launch with the shuttle on its back, the external tank pointing upward or above the shuttle essentially. And then as it got into the thinner parts of the atmosphere, it would rotate 180 degrees to get ready to eject the ET, but also to connect with the TDRS network. I'm correct in saying that, I think.
Especially in the later missions, yeah, because keep in mind, Shuttle was one of the vehicles that helped deploy some of the first TDRS satellites, which,
Yeah.
those who don't know, that's the Tracking Data Relay Satellite Network. So that's a bunch of satellites that you can use to communicate. So, yes, a lot of it was pitching basically upside down so that you would be able to communicate with what was on board the shuttle, space to ground, basically. And then once it got into orbit, you could do space to space through TDRS.
hmm And you can see there on the aero covers there, the little black circles. Those are the antennas, I believe, Ian.
Yes, that does very much look like an antenna right there. So yeah, that's Booster 7's Starlink dish, it seems like. That is on the hydraulic power unit cover. The hydraulic power unit, kind of infamous because it's going to get replaced on Booster 9. They won't need it anymore. But on Booster 7, the hydraulic power unit does control the engine gimbals on the Raptors. So very, very important piece of hardware right there. And looks like that's where they've chosen to install the Starlink dishes at.
And of note for
Mhm.
future starships, that'll be on the chines.
Yeah, those are the little sticky out aero surfaces. You can see one just there going down. They're kind of like from the top down. They look like triangles, and those just kind of they'll help to steer the booster, I think, as it comes back in for entry. Thanks to Zook for becoming a Red Team member. Matthew asking alongside a super chat: will heat tiles have to be fixed on the eventual cargo bay doors? Now, Ian, I think the cargo bay door that we saw in some animations a few years back kind of is on the shiny side, and it kind of opens up like a clamshell. But there's also the Pez dispenser. So what's going on there with the payload the payload door?
Yeah, so first off, to answer the heat shield tile question, no, they will not need to apply heat shield tiles to the door, at least to the majority of it. Maybe they have some on the outer edge of it if it kind of interacts with the heat shield, but I would say very, very unlikely that they would need to install tiles on the door. Now, the door itself, there really isn't one right now. Elon has said multiple times that they are not really fixed on a final cargo bay door design, partly because they really don't need it right now. There are no coming customer flights for Starship anytime soon. While there are some on contract, there are none coming up anytime soon. They have kind of the interim, which is the Starlink payload, the Starlink Pez dispenser, kind of a mini payload bay door, but it can't really be used for non-Starlink things. We've seen some Pathfinders made for the cargo bay doors, but there is no set cargo bay door design. It could be very different from the clamshell or the chomper that you mentioned, Ryan, or it could be the chopper itself. We really don't know, and it's going to be probably a little while before we do see any concrete answer on that.
Yeah, and I believe I'm correct in saying that the first customer payloads to be launched, I'd say in a traditional payload sense, on Starship, I think that was Superbird 9 from the Japanese company Sky Perfect JSAT. That's not scheduled till 2024, and that could slip because we still don't know what kind of state Starship will be in 2024. Hopefully, it would have flown several times before we get into the new year, but still, the data review process for Starship is going to take a while, and it's going to be a little while before we see OFT number 2.
And they do
Just
have
looking
one
back.
more customer, I should point out as well, themselves with Starlink V2s. So
Yeah. There
Yeah.
are also a few contracts that they've signed with some commercial partners where it is not specified which launch vehicle. It could be on Starship, it could be on Falcon, up to SpaceX and the customer's discretion. Also, another big sign will be the construction of a payload processing facility at Starbase. There currently is no payload processing facility. They have a Starlink processing facility, but it seems to be kind of like a storage shed for Starlink satellites. It doesn't seem to be a proper clean room payload processing facility. They will need that before they can do any, comm sets, any major customer missions, because they will require a clean room. You don't want your satellite getting
Oh.
filled with sand or dust.
I mean, they build starships out in the open, but yeah, I think the customers would definitely want a clean room. Thanks to RC Horseman for the super chat here. We also have Kieran becoming a new Red Team member. Thanks very much for that. We also have a super chat from the Penguin Cave, a store message from Taylor. Let's see what Taylor has bought. I'm going to guess it's a patch. And it is a patch. So I'm going to be honest, that's quite easy to guess. We also have Mark saying, thanks for all the streams. We love to make the streams and the videos and everything for you to watch. So it's, you're very welcome, Mark. We also have a super chat here from James. Thanks very much for that. And we also have a store message from Jason in there as well. Clarence has become a new Red Team member. We also thanks to David for the if these are from two different Davids or the same David, I don't know. There's two messages in here from David. One with the Texas Tank Watchers hat in there, and we have another one in here with the patch. Thanks to Gary for becoming a PadRap member. And also thanks to Laura for the store purchase. They say, thanks for always giving us live updates. We appreciate you all. Well, we appreciate you for watching. You also got a patch. These patches are going quite quickly. They're very, like I said earlier, they're hot property. Everyone wants a patch. Thanks to Billy also. I'm going to guess that you also got a patch. Fingers crossed for the successful first mission. I can't wait. I know you all can't wait either. And thanks to B-Dog for becoming a Red Team member. No message here, but $20 from Rickards. Thanks very much for that. A store message from Michael saying to Infinity and Beyond, thank you NSF for your great work. You got the patch as a sticker. That's also a very popular item at the moment on the shop. We also have a couple of purchases here, which just says beans. Okay, we also have $5 from Jim Cavett. Thanks very much for that. And let's get back into some normal questions here, because You don't have to contribute financially to get the questions answered. Just tag us in chat, NASASpaceflight. We'll do our best to answer these, and we've got a few in here. We've been going for just about an hour now, and John W is asking about the FAA license. So Sawyer, what do we know about the FAA license? Because it's getting pretty late now in Eastern. It's approaching 8 p.m. Eastern time. So I'd imagine all of the workers at the FAA dealing with licenses and stuff like that have probably gone home by now.
I could tell you, but I'd have to unalive you. No, I'm kidding. It's basically because we don't know. The FAA is still very tight-lipped. The last we heard is that it is coming soon, TM. I know a lot of people worrying it's still days away. Where is it? How come we don't have it yet? It is important to note that the FAA has issued licenses essentially the night before or the morning of certain other launches. So it's not unheard of that it would be coming in super late. They can still go, hopefully, and get that in. So the fact that there is no news shouldn't be worrying yet. I think we still have a little time, but again, as of now, I believe it's soon TM.
Soon TM, the best kind of soon. We have a question here from Paul asking, will they close the road to lift the Starship? If so, would they launch the same day as the lift? Now, Ian, what kind of precedent is there for road closures to do with lifts compared to launches and stuff like that? Because we definitely know the road is getting closed for the launch.
Yes, yeah, of course the road is getting close for the launch. There'll be a significant evacuation and exclusion zone. But for a lift, there is really no road closure anymore. They used to have them originally when they were using the chopsticks, but now they don't. They don't they don't need to close the road when they lift the Starship, which is pretty nice. You can get some nice up close views of that, some nice camera shots of that. But yeah, there really is no indication for road closure coming up other than say the lifts going away and the chopsticks getting tensioned. And speaking of lifts, I've noticed there's now a lift towards the midsection of Starship around where the FTS is. Interesting. I believe that's new. I don't think we've seen a lift up in that area recently.
That's certainly very interesting because we were suspecting that they'd arm the FTS as close to launch as possible, of course, involving a stack and then making sure that it's actually on the booster, adjusting all of that stuff to make sure that the ship is happy and settled. So I'm not sure what they could be doing up there. I don't know if we can get a closer look at that, but it would be certainly interesting if they are arming the FTS now. Sawyer, do you think that would be pointing towards more, not successfully, more positively towards Monday if they are indeed doing that?
I mean, I would think so. It sounds like they're full steam ahead, especially if they're going ahead with that. Which, a reminder, arming the flight termination system does not mean that it's all, if someone accidentally hits the red button in the control room, it's going to blow up the rocket while people are nearby. It's not anything like that. It just makes it a little less safe when they pull
There
the
we go.
tabs on it. So, oh yeah, good view there.
Yeah.
So it's a good sign, but I don't, it's a good sign. I'll say that.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
nothing
again,
concrete.
Yeah.
yeah, like I said earlier regarding the road closures, I do not think they would be up there on that lift right now, arming the flight termination system, if they were not pretty confident they're getting a launch license very soon for launch. Because arming the flight termination system, it is a relatively big milestone there in the countdown. So I would say we are looking pretty good right now for some kind of test. And Alex is saying right now they are not quite at the FTS box. Seems like they're moving around now.
Yeah, and a launch on Monday would be arming it now. What are we? We're Thursday evening in Starbase. We're just over into Friday in Universal time, like literally on the hour. So yeah, it would be extremely early to be arming this because the closest they can theoretically launch, again, no license yet, would be Monday, judging by road closures, aviation advisories, not Mars, things like that. Noah has a question about fuel. Will they reduce the fuel load due to the lack of payload weight? Now, I think they'll fully load Starship with fuel propellant, the liquid methane and the liquid oxygen. Now, Sawyer, will they reduce that in any capacity, or will they want to fill it up all the way to test Starship to its maximum?
I'm guessing that a lot of the aerodynamics for this vehicle are on the assumption of that all tanks are full, including the header tanks. So you've got the methane or methane, the oxygen, all of that in there is probably helping with balance and mass. Plus, it also gives them a way to test, does the fuel slosh around too much? Is there a risk of pogo or something like that? So I see no negatives to fully fueling it, only positives. So my guess is they will fully fuel it, fly with it fully fueled, essentially always. The only difference is that the Raptor engines will be at 90% of their rated thrust.
Hmm. I'm just gonna try and get. We've had the. I'm just gonna say it here. The patch is so popular. You all seem to be loving the patch, and we've got so many different store messages. So I'm gonna try and get through as many of these as possible real quickly in the next couple minutes or so. Thanks for Joseph for purchasing from the store. We also have you got a patch, not surprising at all. It's an awesome patch. Thanks to Anonymous for purchasing from the store. We also have Tennessee purchasing from the store. Neil saying, awesome coverage. Thank you very much. Well, you're very welcome. You can see all the coverage as well. Bradley also saying, thanks for your dedication to providing these amazing views and insightful commentary. I've learned a lot. I mean, just in the last hour or so, I've learned a lot, and I'm hosting it. So it goes to show just how knowledgeable my co-commentators. We have Ian alongside me and Sawyer for today's stream. We also have a store message from Pierre. Thanks very much for purchasing from the merch store. And there are so many of these, so I'm just going to get back into some normal questions now. If you want to ask a question, tag us at NASASpaceflight in chat. We'll try and answer them as best as we can. SpaceX was just saying in chat, actually, is there any news about arming the FTS? We were just talking about that, so rewind by a couple of minutes, and you can see us talking about the flight termination system. They're not doing it. They're not doing it just yet. The cherry picker is a little high in order to be doing that at the moment. Mike is asking, can we compare the orbital altitudes of this flight, say, versus Starlink satellites in the ISS? Now, Ian, do we know just how high Starship is getting compared to Starlink and the International Space Station?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have any concrete numbers on exactly how high Starship is going. I've seen some numbers floated around like 250 kilometers. I've seen about 1,200 kilometers floated around. So unfortunately, I don't really know the exact orbital height right there. Now, Starlink satellites are about 550 kilometers up. The International Space Station's about 400 to 450 kilometers up. So if this does go to the 1,200 kilometers that I said might be possible, it will be about double the Starlink altitude and about 3 times the International Space Station's altitude. But again, we don't really have concrete numbers yet, and hopefully we'll know in the coming days.
Yeah, what I've heard is about 1,000 kilometers. So waiting for the official numbering though.
We have a question here from Matthew to do with the splashdown of the booster alongside a super chat. Thanks very much. What will the flight look like from the Gulf coast of Florida, high up or along the horizon? And will the boostback/water landing be visible? Now, I'm going to hazard a guess. I'm not an expert in this field, but the boostback is going to be quite close to shore to Boca Chica, and the Gulf of Mexico is quite big, isn't it, Sawyer?
I mean, yeah, it covers a whole bunch of states there. It's a decent sized body of water. There's a chance that maybe you'll see something, because keep in mind that even though the booster is set to head back towards the Boca Chica side of the Gulf, you will still have the ship itself flying around the Gulf, basically around the tip of Florida, around Cuba, trying to avoid all of the populated islands and areas and not land rockets on people by accident. So there's a chance you might see something. As for Hawaii, like we mentioned earlier on in the stream, maybe because it's dark, you might see some glowing if it gets that far, but you're talking a couple 100 miles away from Hawaii still, so not as likely would be my guess. And again, all this speculation, we won't know until it actually flies, and then we can get a better idea for future flights of the trajectory.
We have a question here from NDRVX. Just a normal question again. If you want your question added to the queue, tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight. We'll do our best to answer them. How does the Starship fuel tanks keep the liquid methane and oxygen at cryo temperatures for long periods of time, especially after T0? Now, Ian, what are the temperatures like for the fuels as Starship ascends through the atmosphere?
Now, I do not know those exactly. I know that methane and liquid oxygen are around the same temperature, given the fact that they have a common bulkhead without insulation. Now, liquid methane, I've looked that up, is about negative 160 degrees Celsius. Liquid oxygen is just a little bit colder than that. So they are very, very similar. Now, in order to keep them cold, as you can see, Starship doesn't really have any insulation like you would find on Delta IV, SLS, the Space Shuttle, the Saturn V. So basically, the way that Starship keeps the propellants cold is by just having so much of it, you have a massive, massive thermal mass. In addition, there is some boil off, there is some propellant warming up. They do vent that on the pad. You'll see the vents every now and then, some vents even in flight. Um, but they do have little amounts of boil off, but really the flight is so short, about 8 minutes of active flight on super heavy, and about like an hour and a half on Starship, which I guess is a bit longer. They really don't need to worry about massive amounts of boil off to where you lose significant amounts of performance on the vehicle.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I should try and tackle any of these store messages because the patch is so popular. We also just have a blank super chat here from John W. Thank you very much for that, John. We also have $20 here from Rickers. Thank you very much for that. James becoming a Capcom member. That means you can get access to the Discord if you'd like that. So that's something you now have access to, Capcom and above. Thanks to Fernando buying a few things off of the store. Thank you very much for that. We also have Jeff buying some stuff off the store. Thanks very much. Can't wait until Super Heavy flies. Ready to watch it on NSF, and we are certainly ready to broadcast it to you as well. Excuse me. An anonymous message here saying, excited to watch the launch from here at the US Air Force Academy in Colorado. That's very exciting. You got the patch there, the very popular patch. Kyle also purchasing from the store. Thank you very much for that, Kyle. Thomas also purchasing from the store here. We've got 4 products from James on the store saying NSF is the GOAT. Thanks very much for that, the greatest of all time. We also have George purchasing from the store. So many store messages. You guys are loving this patch. Long time watcher, first time payer. Thanks for the coverage, guys. Well, we do hope that you will enjoy your Starship orbital flight test patch when that comes through. Those have recently been restocked, so if you want to get your hands on one of them, shop.nasaspaceflight.com. You know where to find it. We also have a question here from James alongside a super chat. Got missed in the catch-up first time, but will B7's re-entry transonic boom be the loudest ever produced by an aerospace vehicle? Sawyer, do we know the decibel level of sonic booms?
I don't think so. I don't think it'll be necessarily the biggest ever. Again, a lot of it has to do with just speed and where which part of the vehicle ends up breaking through the speed of sound there. That's why, like with Falcon 9 or the side cores for Falcon Heavy, when they land, you get 2 or 3 sonic booms for the legs, the grid fins, and the vehicle itself. So you get 3 different parts there. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what it can hear and if it can be heard during the flight.
Sounds good. We also have Dave with a store message. Thanks for everything you do for the community. We love doing it for you as well. Jacob saying, let's light this candle. I do hope that if this goes on anyone's birthday, make sure to let us know, because there'll be one certainly very large candle to put on your cake. We also have a message from Todd alongside a couple purchases. Welcome to the Team EJ, who was on the update stream yesterday. Always great to keep up the, as always, keep up the great content, folks. Later, nerds. Well, don't go away just yet. We've still got a little while left broadcasting commentary live to you wonderful people. John saying, always fantastic coverage. Thank you very much, John, alongside a purchase there on the store. And that is the To the Moon and Mars sticker. We've got a couple other things on there as well. And we also have a question from an anonymous store purchaser. Question I've had for a while. Since the switch to Raptor 2 has already happened, why was SN22 stacked if it only had Raptor 1 mounts? Ian, why was SN22 stacked?
That's a good question. We really don't know the answer to that. The closest guess that I could give that I feel like is most likely is a bit of a production pathfinder just to get a little bit more practice on stacking a vehicle, making sure you get those welds all right, get the alignment perfect. Because they knew that the next vehicle they would stack would be Ship 24. Um, Now, the interesting thing to point out there, and the reason I think that is because Ship 21 was not fully stacked, and there was not that much of a difference between Ship 21 and Ship 22. So I feel that Ship 22 was only fully stacked just as a production pathfinder, get a little more experience here so that they're even better for Ship 24, which, as you can see, is now on the pad and is getting ready for the orbital flight. So they probably knew the next one was a pretty big deal. They wanted to make sure they had everything aligned, everything ready to go for the big ship.
We have a store message here from Chris saying the store needs some shuttle merchandise. Um,
I
yeah,
would like
we'll
to
have to
point out
talk
the
with it.
only space shuttle name that is in our store is Endeavor. So,
There you go, Sawyer. Your favourite shuttle gets a mention in the store. We have to
yes.
mention to this. We have to have a talk with the store team about that. Um, James with a store message saying, "I've been watching you guys since Starhopper. What a wild ride it has been. Let's go Starship." And it's also been quite. It feels like Starhopper feels like a long time ago, but in terms of rocket development timelines, it was only like 4 years ago. 2019, 2018, 2019. That's not really that long ago. It just feels like it's been a long time. Let's get into some normal questions here from everybody watching along at home. Again, question for us, put it in chat at NASASpaceflight. We'll do our best to answer. Charlie asking, do the forward flaps move during ascent for stabilization since Super Heavy is aerodynamically unstable? Forward flap changes pitch when rotated due to the canted angle of their hinge. Ian, what do we think about flaps flapping in flight?
Yeah, so first off, it does seem like the flaps are going to be completely locked in place, fully deployed during flight. Now, you do mention that the stack is naturally unstable. You know, you have wings up front, which is generally a big no-no when it comes to designing rockets. Now, if you deployed one of those flaps or took them out of, you put them more into the airflow, the airstream, it becomes even more unstable. And it would really make the vehicle want to flip over. Now, thankfully, since the flaps are fully symmetrically deployed, they're not, negotiating or fighting the airstream. And the Raptors on Super Heavy have a very strong gimbal. The vehicle won't really flip over. And also, fun fact, the Falcon 9 and the Atlas 5 and any vehicle with a protruding upper fairing, a fairing wider than the body of the vehicle, is kind of naturally unstable itself because you have that massive source of drag up on top. So something like Starship is not really that unheard of. Of course, having flaps on top is kind of unheard of, but it's not that uncommon to have a naturally unstable launch vehicle. That's where the engine gimbal comes in, and that's where very strong and very precise control comes in.
And it's important to note that future ships are being built without them, correct?
Yes, Ship 26 and Ship 27 have been built without heat shield tiles and without flaps. We don't know the exact reasoning for that. It seems most likely that it's just to speed up the process, get a little bit of experience, kind of production pathfinders, but also just to get some ships quickly out the door so they have things to fly.
We have a question here from Fix asking, will either ship be landing back at Boca Chica or will they both do water landings? Now, I'm afraid to break it to you, S-24 is kind of on a mission to the middle of the Pacific. That is where Ship 24 is going. That is where the Notmars are. That is kind of the plan that has been set in place all along. But Sawyer, there was a little bit of ambiguity around what the booster would actually be doing, wasn't there?
Yeah, the original plan was would they maybe come back and try and land it? Are they just going to ditch it? What do they plan to do with it? So, right now, they are not working on catching with the chopsticks and landing it back on land at Boca yet. That is still a goal for the future, but it is on hold right now with their main focus being seeing how the vehicle itself flies. They are going to try and get it close, so they will be doing the full boost back burn and whatnot and a kind of final burn that might resemble what it would do if it was landing, but it is going to end up in the waters in the Gulf of Mexico, kind of near Texas, kind of near Starbase.
Yeah, it's a bit the Notmar is wide. It spreads across pretty much the whole Gulf, but the Notmar also has to account for if they have to activate the FTS, the booster coming back. So, and these aren't really like pointed out in the NOTMAR. We just have a big open bit of ocean saying, don't go there. Something might happen there. We don't know what will happen there. So yeah, that's pretty much all we have to go off for a booster return. Anis with a good question here about the thermal protection system tiles. If we'd seen them coming off the ship at liftoff, would there still be hope for re-entry in one piece? Now we don't. I don't even know if the tiles as they are will be able to hold up in re-entry. Ian, have you got any thoughts on how far the ship will actually be able to go with a reduced number of tiles?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we really don't know, and we really don't have any benchmarks to work off of. Um, Given the fact that Starship, of course, it does have heat shield tiles, you would want to have all of those for a nominal reentry. They also do have a bit of a felt covering underneath the heat shield tiles. We don't know exactly how thermally resistant that is. We do believe it's a thermally resistant padding, though. But it's not necessarily the end of the world if they do lose, one or two tiles in flight. I would say it's definitely not a great outcome, but we've seen the closest example I could think of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sora, I believe it was STS-27, where they did lose either a significant chunk or an entire heat shield tile. And the fact that the area under the heat shield tile was a stainless or just a steel antenna, the high melting point of the steel saved the space shuttle and saved Atlantis from, replicating Columbia on STS-107. So given that fact, I think it may not necessarily be the end of Starship if it does lose one tile, but I would not hold my breath on that. That's for sure.
I think you put it perfectly. It all depends on how many, and more importantly, where they would lose the tiles. For
Yes.
example, I mean, all I could think of is when Columbia first went from Palmdale to the Cape, and it came back missing half of its tiles that flew off just in transport. But even when STS-1 landed at Edwards, John Young's first thing as soon as he ran off the orbiter was to look around and see how the tiles fared. So I'm sure it's going to be very similar if that's the case here, looking how many tiles would have survived, if there was any areas that risked a burn through. So the other bonus again is that we do have upgraded heat shield tiles, even from the silica based ones that we had on shuttle to the tough rock that they're using now.
We've just had a bunch of support come in from many different people, so I'm going to try rattle through these as quickly as possible. Thanks to Telemetry for becoming a PadRat member. We have a $50 super chat from Ben saying, I would love to hear if NSF has done their own wet dress for the live stream and what kinds of camera tech equipment upgrades you've done for launch day. Well, I know there's been launch day behind the scene content before from Thomas in the member section, so check that out. See, there's a little bit of sneaky behind the scenes stuff that you can see in our members program. Annie's saying, love the stream. Where's this gone? There it is. Love the stream. Can't wait to see Starship fly. When will you be releasing the spreadsheet for all the juicy milestones for Starship? Well, Adrian's spreadsheet has kind of been replaced with the Starship website now. Now that SpaceX has given us a proper timeline. So yeah, I haven't actually asked Adrian how he's feeling about his spreadsheet basically becoming redundant. Stephen saying my SN15 stickers were destroyed. That's a shame. Got to resupply them with the new stuff, and you've got some to the Moon and Mars stickers and a couple of other bits there from the store at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Taylor has upgraded to upgraded to PadRat and then upgraded to Red Team. So thanks very much for that, Taylor. Joe saying with a super chat, my sons and I, 8 and 9, have our own launch control room. That's very cool. Ready to watch the launch with the 3 screens, NASA Spaceflight, Tim Dodd, the OT astronaut, and SpaceX feeds all synced up for the launch. That's going to be a very interesting and exciting view for you there. And we also have $10 here from Eric. Thanks very much for that. And Taylor upgrading again from Capcom, upgrading to Capcom, meaning you get access to Discord, and again to Launch Director. That's one of the highest levels you can get. Thanks very much for that, Taylor. It's greatly appreciated. Jim gifted 1 Red Team membership. If you received that, make sure to thank Jim in chat. And Taylor upgrading again to Flight Engineer, going through all the ranks. Thanks very much for that. We have an anonymous store message here with just much love. Thanks very much for that. And that's from the shop with the test patch, which is selling very quickly once again. And Ryan, another good name here in the chat, so with a store message saying, great work team, happy to support. Well, thanks for your support. We'll keep pumping out content like crazy as we've been doing this week. And Vinicius saying, hello from Brazil. Unfortunately, too far to travel to Starbase right now, but at least I'm securing the patch. Great work, NSF. Well, we do hope that you'll enjoy your patch indeed. We'll always, of course, have our live coverage of the launch right here. And Doug asking a question, will the B7 grid fins be out for launch or folded down like Falcon 9? Now, Ian, what's the procedure for the grid fins on Super Heavy compared to Falcon?
Yes, so there is a pretty significant difference for the grid fins compared to Super Heavy and Falcon 9, and you can see the difference right in front of you. Super Heavy's grid fins cannot retract, so they are always going to be fully extended. That goes for during liftoff, that goes for during flight, during processing. Those grid fins were installed back at the production site, and they've been extended ever since. That is because any mechanism to retract the grid fins would, cost mass, it would cost complexity, and of course cost money too. All of which you really don't want to spend if you don't need to. And they've figured out that since the grid fins are basically at the center of the vehicle, and even as the vehicle pitches down and angles itself downrange, the grid fins really don't add much drag. So any savings, any drag savings by retracting the grid fins 90 degrees down flush with the vehicle really aren't offset by the mass that you would spend on that, the extra weight, the extra complexity, the extra things that could go wrong there. So they decided not to have any kind of retracting grid fins on Super Heavy.
Just going to thank here Real Foggy for becoming a Red Team member, and also Rocky for becoming a Capcom member, one of the highest up there. You get that's kind of the midpoint. You get access to the Discord though. Make sure that you check that perk out. It's a very cool perk indeed. Also got some store messages here. One from Lachlan saying, "Thank you. This jumper looks amazing. Watching the live stream right now." Well, thanks very much. Oh, you got the patch jumper. That's a very cool jumper indeed. Everyone loves the patch, right? Everyone is loving the patch. We also have a super chat here from Adrian. Would 1,500 tons of fuel as a mass balance be enough for a Mars insertion burn? Do we know what kind of fuels or amount of fuel would be needed for kind of like a Mars insertion burn, Sawyer? Any idea on what Starship will be needing for that kind of orbital trajectory?
What you'll be needing is a bunch of in-orbit refueling. I mean, that is the main infrastructure for the future is you launch a bunch of these starships up, you have them loaded up with fuel ready to go, and then when you're ready, you send whatever your main vehicle is going to be, and you can load it up to the top, and that way it's got a full tank of gas, essentially, to make it out to the moon and eventually onto Mars. So I would say it's going to take a couple launches to get to that point.
We also have a couple of anonymous messages here. That's probably from the same person saying, "Let's go." I'm very excited. Let's see what you got here. You got the sticker patch. And we also have a store message here from Austin saying, "You guys provide the most amazing visuals and incredibly comprehensive commentary. Super excited for the first real test flight." I'm very excited as well, but I'm also getting ready for some scrubs just in case. And a message here from the store just saying, "When orbit?" Well, it's not a full orbit on this first test flight. Maybe OFT2. Ian, do you think that they go for the full orbit in the second orbital test flight if they can get enough data from the first?
Yeah, and you kind of answered that at the end of your question there, in my opinion. It depends on how flight test one goes. If they make it, say, 20 seconds into flight and the vehicle fails, I think that's kind of cutting it a bit too close to go fully orbital. But if they make it, even halfway through the ship burn and they're like, hey, we know exactly what happened, we know exactly what's wrong and how to fix it, maybe they'll go ahead for an orbital flight. I think that really it depends on how this flight goes. It depends on how comfortable SpaceX is. Even if this goes perfectly, it doesn't seem out of the picture for them to just repeat the flight or do something very, very similar to this. The added complexity of going fully orbital, of course, is having to have a deorbit burn. Being confident enough that your Raptors will reignite for that deorbit burn, because Starship is huge. I mean, as you can see here, if that thing is stuck in orbit and you cannot deorbit it, that is a major, major issue. So they need to be confident that Raptor can reignite. And it would not be surprising to me in the slightest if we need to wait a few flights to go to pure orbit. But I think when it does happen, it would not shock me, of course, that they have Starlink satellites on board. Maybe, I don't know, like a CubeSat or two just for fun. It would not shock me if they have a payload on board then. But as to when it will be, I don't see it happening anytime very in the near future.
We have another store message here from Nelson saying, "Thanks for the patch. Everyone's loving the patch." And we also thanks to TRA5212 for becoming a Red Team member. Now, we're going to get into some more of the tagged questions from chat. If you have a question, it doesn't matter how big or small it is, we'll do our best to answer it. Put it in chat, tag us at NASASpaceflight. It'll take it into the queue, and we'll be able to try and answer it to the best of our abilities. And Torsk asking, will the Raptor engines run at 100% thrust because they don't have the mass of a payload in the ship? It's just going to be empty, isn't it, Sawyer? So do we know what percentages are kind of being targeted?
Yes, the target is 90% thrust for these Raptor engines. The static fire was even less than that, so this will be a large amount of thrust still produced even at 90%. I don't know if that is because of the payload mass, but regardless, it's kind of like how the space shuttle, same thing, started off with lower thrust numbers, which at the time was 100%, eventually working their way up to 104.5% of their maximum rated thrust. I could see that happening in the future, but for this flight, we know it is scheduled to be at 90% max thrust.
And I will interject real quick just to add that, just adding on to what Sawyer said, since they're flying at 90% thrust, this kind of reminds me of the first Falcon Heavy demo flight. I believe they flew at 92% max thrust of the Raptors. Of the Merlins. Excuse me.
I was going to say, if you put Raptors on Falcon Heavy, that's a very powerful Falcon Heavy you've got there.
I would love to see that for the record, but they flew at, I believe, 92% of the Merlin's max thrust. So this is not really something unheard of, especially from SpaceX on a vehicle's demo flight. And of course, in the future, they will ramp that up to 100% as needed or as they desire.
Andy in Colorado is asking, would it make sense or even possible to put Starlink on the ISS? This kind of going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago about Starlink on Starship. SpaceX names everything with stars nowadays. Sawyer, do you think that Starlink could be put on the ISS? Because I think the ISS has a TDRS connection, I think.
I mean, at least we're not adding Starliner into this conversation, then it'd be really... The communication system right now does involve, I believe there is some TDRS connection with the ISS. There's always also the ground tracking stations that they communicate with as well. I don't know if that would be as much of a benefit, because again, as of right now, the current constellation of satellites of the V1.5s essentially are all orbiting below the International Space Station. Eventually, some of the V2s will enter an orbit that is above the current orbit of the ISS, but that hasn't happened yet. I could see that maybe more as a private station utilizing that as the Starlink network upgrades to V2/V2 minis. But again, that's pure speculation of if they would use it.
I'm going to add on there, Sawyer, real quick. You did mention that they have the TDRS satellites, that's what they use right now, but the ISS is getting very soon, or they may have gotten it just very recently as well. They are getting a laser communication suite. So basically, they will have a laser that they will shine back to the ground to send data back. And it sounds really weird, but basically, as you pulse the laser, it kind of sends the zeros and ones of binary code. And laser communication can be incredibly fast, like 200 megabits per second fast. So the ISS is already getting a comms upgrade. Starlink wouldn't be that big of a jump for them, especially once they get that laser communication test suite online.
So if you are having slow internet at home, you need to complain to your provider and say, hey, the ISS in space gets faster internet than I do. Maybe you'll get a discount.
Starship, while it is 300 kilometers above the ground, is getting faster data than me, and that is a test flight.
Joseph Owens has just become a Capcom member. That means you get access to the Discord. William saying, former Air Force F-15 driver, born too late, would have loved to have flown this rocket to Mars. Love your channel, never miss a feed. And you got the patch there, and we are absolutely selling these like mad. There are so many of these being sold at the moment, and you guys seem to really be loving them. So thanks to that. Brian also with a store message saying, let's light this candle. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's still on track for Monday, but no license, just a road closure for now, which is dependent on a launch license. So yeah, nothing set in stone for that at the moment, but fingers crossed, hopefully we'll get that first attempt on Monday. Wayland's Wings, sorry if I got that wrong, is asking, what is the latest... Oh, there you go, the road closure's on screen now. Wayland Wings asking, what is the latest on the Star Factory at the production site, which is intended to replace tents. Have they started removing the tents? Ian, do we know if any tents have been removed in favour of Star Factory just yet, or is it just adding capacity for the moment?
Yeah, so we know their plan was eventually to, build the Star Factory. Once they get that set up, they would start taking down the tents. We have not reached the time yet where they're going to start taking down the tents. Tent 1, 2, and 3 are still fully intact right now. And in fact, they've actually built an extra tent a bit further away from the existing tents. I believe it's a shipping and receiving area. But they do have Star Factory. It seems to be online and producing rings and ring stacks. You could see it towards the right of your camera there. But all 3 tents are still intact and still producing things as I speak.
Yep, there's some good pictures of it, and you can also see some of the work being done around it in the Starbase update video that went live this afternoon as well.
Yeah, it's
Or sorry,
it's
not
so
Starbase
busy
Update. It's
down
just
there.
some of the things going on at Starbase, I should say. Starbase Update's a
Yeah,
little different, but this is a great look
yeah,
at all the things that have happened the last couple days that you can watch as well.
And if you like looking at
yeah.
these cameras and seeing exactly what's going on with the Star Factory as it happens, we have our 24/7 Starbase live cameras always up on the channel with so many different views around Boca Chica, showing the launch pad, production site, any cool activities happening, always there. And there's a great shot of the in-progress Star Factory. And to be clear, this is not the complete building. It doesn't look that huge and that impressive, even though it is pretty big. Um, this is only a fraction of what the final factory will be. It seems as if they're going to be tearing down tent number 3, then tent number 2, then tent number 1. They're going to slowly build onto the factory.
Moving on to a question from Jonathan here. Will they be testing the vacuum Raptor engines? There are 3 RVACs installed underneath the ship at the moment, and Sawyer, we worked on a video of this very quickly not last week, earlier in the week. So how many engines are exactly going to be ignited at stage separations? Are they going to be using all of the vacuums as well as the sea levels?
Just for time reference, that was yesterday.
Was it?
Yeah,
It's
the
been
video went live
crazy.
yesterday. Anyway, regardless, yes, we will have basically they're doing everything up till that point as if it were a normal Starship flight. So the Booster 7 will prepare to do its boost back burn, and then Ship 24 will ignite the RVAC, the Raptor vacuum engines, to continue its push into not necessarily orbit, but to space and to where its intended target will be that will eventually land it in Hawaii. Unfortunately, though, they will not be relit to help with that part.
We have a question here as a super chat from Lachlan. Hello again, saying any guesses as to when ship 26 and 27 and so on and so forth will fly? Ian, do we have any clue what the missions will be assigned to the, for example, 26, which is the bare Starship, I believe. It's flapless and heat shieldless at the moment.
Yeah, it is one of the 2 bare ships. Ship 26 and Ship 27 are both lacking heat shield tiles and flaps. However, Ship 28, which has just finished stacking, does have flaps and tiles again. Now, we don't know their exact schedule, and this is actually something I was wondering just a few hours ago. Is 25 going to fly next? Will 26 fly next? We really don't know exactly. Honestly, I kind of doubt SpaceX knows as well. It probably depends exactly how the orbital flight test goes. Do they want to retry reentry and fly ship 25, or are they just like, oh, we just want to figure out how to launch the darn thing and fly ship 26? Ship 27, I do believe, has the PEZ dispenser installed, so they could do some kind of demo Starlink satellite to play with that. I'm not sure. But my guess would be ship 25 or ship 26, and when? That depends on what happens over the next few days, what happens with the first orbital flight.
Sounds cool. We have a question here from Emmanuel asking, when are they restacking Ship 24 back on top of Booster 7? We touched on this earlier, but many more people have joined since then, so we'll bring it up again. So the ship restacking is dependent on the flight termination system, isn't it, Sawyer?
Yes, the answer is it will be up there before liftoff, is the guaranteed answer. But in all seriousness, right now, the last thing that's needed to do is to arm the flight termination system, or FTS, which they are holding off on doing as long as possible. It's one of those things where it doesn't mean that the FTS is already fully explosive, and if you touch it the wrong way, the whole ship's going to blow up. It just removes one less layer of safety in this preparation part, so it makes it slightly more dangerous. So that's why they wait as long as possible, most likely. So I wouldn't be surprised if this goes until, say, even a day or two before scheduled liftoff.
We have a question here from JO3H8TR. I assume there's meant to be a way you say that with the numbers. Does SpaceX treat the grid fins like the flaps in flight, or are they active? Or are they inert, Ian? I know we were speaking at the flaps earlier. What about the grid fins?
Yes, so like I said, the grid fins are fully extended during flight, but they are not being actuated during flight. Now, like I said, they are around the physical center of the vehicle, and because they are around there, even if they did want to actuate the grid fins, they would provide little, if any, aerodynamic support or control. Again, because they're around the center of the vehicle, it's not really going to do much. You want to have the flaps like how a plane has flaps on the back of the wings towards the back of the vehicle, or sorry, the elevators and ailerons. So the grid fins wouldn't even really do anything if they could move them, but no, they are not moved during ascent.
And we have, I've lost it. I had a question I was going to talk about. We have a $10 tip here from Ken. This is the question. Do we know if the launch license would cover just one launch or multiple? Now, Sawyer, do launch licenses in general just apply to one launch or a series of launches? How do they work, and how would that be applied to Starship?
Each launch gets its own launch license. So anytime you see, 4 Falcon 9 launches in a week, that's 4 launch licenses from the FAA. A lot of them will have in there, taking into account for the delay and things like that. So it's not like every time they scrub, they have to get another new license. But before they can lift off on any flight, they have to get a new launch license. Unless there are some, I believe, that, as Michael's pointing out in the back channel, that some of the Falcons have a bulk license potentially where you'll cover a few at once. But for what we're talking about here today, for each Starship flight, especially with it being new and experimental, each flight will need its own launch license, kind of like they did for the hops.
Yeah, and especially this is a test flight of a test article vehicle. This is not a workhorse that Falcon 9 is. Falcon 9 has been proven to be extremely reliable over the last decade and a bit. So yeah, this is a completely different ball game than Falcon, especially in terms of licensing. Nomad has a question here. For longer flights like to Mars, could SpaceX install an RTG on Starship? That's certainly very interesting. I know in the animation we got in 2016, I believe, there were solar panels kind of flapping out from Starship. Ian, have we had any words whether an RTG would be used on a long duration mission?
Yeah, so could they use an RTG? Absolutely, they physically could. But RTGs really don't provide much power, it's expensive, and you need to get special launch licensing to launch a nuclear payload. So, like when Atlas V launched the Perseverance rover or the Curiosity rover, it needed to have extra nuclear licensing, which was a pain for ULA to go through to get Atlas V certified. Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy right now cannot launch RTGs. They are not nuclear certified to launch. So Starship, if it gets certified, they could, but RTGs really don't provide a lot of power. Starship, in theory, will need a lot of power. And like you said, Ryan, they're just going to put solar panels on it. We don't know their exact solar panel design. We know with the HLS Starship, they're just going to have a ring around the top. We've seen renders with deployable solar panels. We really don't know how that would work, how those would fit in the engine bay. But thankfully, SpaceX is still a while away from needing to figure that exact problem out. But no RTGs, extremely likely no RTGs on Starship.
If I may
Yeah,
jump
then
in really quick, I'm sure there's some
go on,
people who
Sawyer.
aren't totally sure what we're talking about here. RTG is a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, which I know that's a mouthful. Basically, the way these work, kind of like what they have with the rovers on Mars, some of them, is that the heat from the decaying isotopes from these radioactive materials then power the generator that powers the Mars rovers, or in this case, could potentially power Starship if they put that in, and most commonly it uses plutonium-238.
I was going to mention that when I read out the question, but I have to admit I actually forgot what RTG stood for. So thanks for that, Sawyer. I'd
I
also
gotcha.
just add that unlike KSB, RTGs aren't like an infinite power glitch in real life. It works a little bit different to how it works in KSB. Charlie, also a electricity power question. Where are the batteries on Starship, Ian? Do we know where they are?
Yeah, so I actually don't know exactly where they are. I've been wondering this myself. We used to know on the earlier starships like SN5, SN8, and so the batteries were at the top of the forward dome. I believe they've been moved to the engine bay. So inside the aft dome section. However, I'm not entirely certain on that. And the batteries specifically, I believe those are a 100 kilowatt hour Model S/Model X battery pack from Tesla, which makes sense because they have Model 3 motors driving the grid fins. Or sorry, driving, well, actually, yeah, driving the grid fins, but driving the flaps on Starship as well. On Super Heavy, I don't know exactly where those batteries are either, possibly down somewhere in the engine section or maybe up on the forward dome. I don't know exactly, unfortunately. Do you know, Sawyer?
I do not. I'm in the same boat as you.
Gotcha.
I was going to say, speaking of Starbase, we're live from Starbase with live feeds of Starbase. Scott asking, any status on Starbase Florida, the Starship pad being built at 39A? Now, Sawyer, we've been seeing a bit of progress on that over the last year or so. The tower's been going up, and then we saw the chopsticks, was it a month ago, a couple months ago, something like that?
A few months ago, yeah. Right now, things seem a little bit on the slower side there because it seems like most of the work on Starship is kind of being focused on Starbase right now. But it has been slow and steady progress on that. We have also seen the parts being worked on over at Roberts Road, just nearby, where they're working on what would appear to be parts for a future tower, which could be at multiple different locations. We don't exactly know where yet. But in terms of getting an update, a little birdie told me, or should I say a little helicopter told me, there might be a flyover coming up soon that will give you an update.
Sounds very interesting indeed, and we can see on screen now a very rained out Cape Canaveral on Space Coast Live.
Wow.
The weather in Starbase, I must admit, is much nicer for this beautiful Texan sunset we're getting than the pitch black Kennedy Space Center right now. I feel for everybody working there. That does not look like wonderful weather indeed.
Florida has been dealing with
Botto's
some serious rain and flooding recently,
Yeah,
especially
and it
south.
looks like it. Yeah. Botto's World with a super chat asking, when the Starship or Falcon 9 second stage separates from the booster, what is in place to protect the booster from being destroyed by the plume from the second stage igniting its engine or engines in Starship's case? Ian, is there any kind of protection in place to protect the boosters?
Yeah, nothing special, but same with Falcon 9. Super Heavy's just gonna get blasted by Starship's plume, but it's fine. That's safe. It's just gonna push it away a little bit. At that distance, it's not that big of a deal in terms of damaging the vehicle. We've seen Falcon 9, right when the second stage ignites, you get the inner stage gets blasted with the Merlin vacuum plume, and when it flips to the boost back, the side gets blasted as well by the engine plume. So really not that big of a deal. There is no special protection in place, just the strong stainless steel sides of the booster.
Uh, Lindsay Abrams asking, will the ship do a flip and burn? This is also related to the video that went out yesterday. Sawyer, what's happening to the ship as it encounters the Pacific Ocean just off the coast of Hawaii?
So as we mentioned, it's designed to be able to not have basically get to this entry for this mission without having to burn engines anyway. So it will not be doing that, and it seems like it will be attempting the belly flop style maneuver where it will go on its side as if it would re-enter, but it's not going to do the burn that would swing itself upright for a landing. So we will not basically see any burn or engines ignite, but we will expect it to try and do the belly flop part, so no flip back after or burn.
Yeah, just a face palm into the Pacific Ocean, which I'm sure will not be comfortable for the ship.
Yeah, don't go against it in a
But yeah.
belly flop contest.
No, certainly don't. We have a question here from Fred asking, why not use Starship tech on Falcon 9, fixed grid fin for less weight, catch with no legs, etc. Sawyer, do we think we'll see any of this kind of interesting technology, like the chopsticks being integrated onto Falcon 9, or is that vehicle already kind of bedded in the design, kind of restricted?
I would say that the Falcon 9 you see is the Falcon 9 you get for the most part. There's occasionally little tweaks, but this is Block 5, their fifth variant essentially. And Block 5 is the final version of it. There's also some other issues with that. So, for example, if you change the design, you would have to recertify it, especially the fact that it carries crew and currently is the only US provider that is carrying crew actively to the ISS, with Starliner coming online soon. But for now, it's the only one. You don't want to change that design and then have to re-crew rate it in addition to testing it and getting it ready again for flight. So at this point, they've got it pretty down pat. And down the line, their goal is to eventually retire Falcon 9 and use Starship for everything. So use the reliable Falcon 9 for what you've got now and the Falcon Heavy, and then transition to the Starship with this upgraded tech for the future.
Gaklan asking with a super chat, could Starship ever be modified to take payload to and from the ISS? Now, I know in some very early renders, when the vehicle was still the interplanetary transport system, I believe, we got some renders of it theoretically docked to the ISS, and it is massive compared to the ISS. So, Ian, is there any possibility of Starship visiting the world's orbiting laboratory?
Yeah, there is a possibility, I guess. You need to deal with, of course, the structural loads of having something the size of the ISS hanging off a single docking port. I think that'd be pretty much a nightmare. I don't really see why they would need it. I think it would be the ultimate form of cargo transport to the space station to get 100 tons of cargo up there at once compared to like 5 tons on Dragon. But I don't really see the need for that. At that point, you basically doubled the volume of your space station. I don't really see that ever being a thing. It would be awesome to see. I would love to see that, but I don't really think we ever will, unfortunately.
But there is another space station planned for the future that could likely use it, and that would be Lunar Gateway, which is NASA's plan to have an orbiting station right around the moon. So,
The International Space Station is only about 4.2, not 4.2, look at me go, 420 metric tons. So theoretically, only about 4 and a bit Starship launches would be needed to launch the ISS into orbit. So just for a comparison there of how capable Starship is compared to how relatively light the ISS actually is, which is just kind of a bonkers thing to think about.
yeah, so imagine just a Lunar Gateway with a giant Starship docked to it. I think that deserves a moon, moon, moon chant.
We'll get chat will now be flooded with that. Thanks, Sawyer.
I mean,
Sorry,
I
moderators.
I personally would not mind when the ISS is about to be deorbited. Send a Starship up there, grab like Tranquility or Columbus or one of the modules, bring it back and put it in the Smithsonian, because I think the ISS deserves that. I don't think it deserves to be fully deorbited, but that's just me.
Why can't we put the European model somewhere back in, like, I don't know, like Europe? Because I don't have to fly all the way out to DC again just to see a module of the ISS.
Well, Starship's big enough. Let's grab the Japanese module, a Russian module. You all get
Yeah.
modules.
Let's take it home. Yeah. Let's bang through some of these store messages and super chats and the like real quick. Duke saying that they're heading to Boca soon. Thanks very much for the purchase on the store. Yet again, another patch. These are really popular with everybody at the moment. The patch is selling very, very quickly. Thank you to everyone buying the patch. And Anonymous has got the patch on a mug as well. You can get it as a sticker and many other different things. Greg saying that they love the patch. Everyone loves the patch. And Kenneth with a store message also saying, thank you for everything. The channel helped me get through COVID and has inspired me greatly ever since. You're very welcome, Kenneth. Thanks for supporting us through the years. And Duke has become a launch director member. Thanks very much for that as well. We also have Lachlan Wall upgrading to Capcom. That means you get access to the Discord. And Nick becoming a Pad Rat member. We also have a message here from Dean asking if Raptor 2s have a 99% startup reliability, the probability of at least one of 33 B7 Raptors not operating at T0 is 27%. So do you think the Raptor 2 startup reliability is higher than 99%? Ian, what do we think about the reliability of Raptors at the moment?
I would say they are pretty decent. Given the 33 engine static fire, they had 2 engines not work, one of which was shut down purposefully prior to the test, the second of which failed to ignite for the test. I would say that they've probably learned from their mistakes, learned exactly what caused those issues, and fixed those issues. I would say they have pretty decent reliability. But at the same time, I would not be surprised if we have 1 or 2 aborts due to engines not igniting on time.
We also have a anonymous message here from the store. I've been following NSF for years now, doing great work. Let's reach for the stars. We should certainly do that indeed. Brandon saying, been watching since Starhopper lost its nose. You guys have brought me joy every morning with the updates. Thank you for what you do. I can't believe we're this close to liftoff. I can't believe it either, but I'm going to try and keep the hype down just a little bit inside. It's very difficult. I want to prepare for scrubs, and I don't want to be extremely disappointed, which I know I am going to be if it does scrub. Rocky with a store message. Keep up the great work, guys. Really looking forward to the stakeout stream starting again next week. You're very welcome, Rocky. I hope you do enjoy the content we're going to be absolutely grinding out for you over the OFT period. And Jim has with a super chat saying, how many Tesla Roadsters can a Starship put in Leo? Sawyer or Ian, I don't know if either of you could get the mass of a Tesla Roadster and see how that compares to 100 metric tons of Starship capability. Randolph saying, you've done it again, awesome patch. Great to see that you enjoy the patch. Zach saying that I can't tune in to watch your awesome coverage of history in the making again. I'm glad I'm able to finally get something from the store, and what better than your first patch. Well, we do hope that you enjoy the patch when you get it. John has also been purchasing from the store, and so has Tim, saying, I appreciate all the hard work you folks do. Well, we certainly appreciate your support. A super chat here from James with a question, or quickly before we get into that, does anyone have the Tesla Roadster answer?
About 76, rounding possibly 77, assuming a 100-ton payload mass and no payload adapter of any kind. So
there you go.
Yes,
Wow.
it might be volume limited on the amount of Tesla Roadsters they can fit.
I'm glad you did it. My degree's in journalism. I can't do math.
Not exactly a multi-story car park worth of Tesla Roadsters, but a considerable amount. James asking, what are the chances SpaceX adds a CubeSat deployer in the engine bay? Also, imagine a drone deploying from the engine bay during descent. The drone deployment from underneath going down seems a bit. It would, even if it was falling, it would have a mass lower and the air resistor. But anyway, that's complicated math. CubeSat
SLS,
deployer, what do we think?
I mean, SLS has a CubeSat deployer on it, kind of similar. So you've got Falcon, Dragon, with the trunk. You've got SLS, which the upper stage also has the CubeSat deployments. So I think down the line it could absolutely be possible.
Just imagine how many CubeSats you can squeeze into there. Starship is huge. It boggles the mind.
Yeah, we have Transporter 7 scheduled to launch in a couple hours from now aboard a Falcon 9. Imagine Transporter 20 when we start using Starship.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. William with $20, thanks very much for that. Francis with a store message appreciating everything we do. We appreciate you for watching. Thanks to Hawaiian Dragon for becoming a Red Team member. If you're actually in Hawaii during the Earth Team, make sure to have a look. You may see something, depends when it launches, like we were talking about earlier. We're not really sure what will be visible, but I think it would be worth keeping an eye out just in case. Eileen saying, it's happening! So excited. We're excited as well. Anonymous with saying, go Starship, go Super Heavy, go NSF. Thanks very much for that in the store. And Daniel saying that they are now orbital flight test ready with their recent store purchase, which I'm going to hazard a guess. There it is another patch. And if you yourself would like to get your hands on one of these very extremely popular patches, then make sure to head on over to shop.nasaspaceflight.com. We've got pretty much everything you need to satisfy your space nerd merch needs. We've got our flight test patch there, which you can sew onto anything you like, really. We also have this patch design on many other items. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, we've got jumpers, we've got mugs, we've got just a sticker version as well. If you don't want to actually sew it, I don't know, into your laptop, you just put a sticker on there instead. We've also got the flag banner there if you want to pin it up on your wall and you don't fancy trying to sew a patch to your wall. I don't think that would really work. So you've got the banner there as well, and of course we've got all of our other items on the merch store as well. Metal prints, they're very popular as well. Many pictures from our photographers out in the field. This beautiful rainbow picture that was taken just the other day down at the launch pad at Starbase, Ship 24 stacked on top of Booster 7 with some wonderful colours in the background. We also have metal prints of many other vehicles as well from all across the world. Really, we've got some more Starship testing ones. We've got the rocket garden with pretty much every rocket you can think of on there. We've got some SLS. We've got some Atlas in there, I think, potentially as well. There are many different rockets and metal prints you can get there. All of that available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com for your wearing, seeing, feeling pleasure. All of that merchandise and swag available
By the way, Ryan,
on the website.
You are now officially an NSF host. You made one of the smoothest transitions into the merch. That makes you officially a host. Congratulations, sir.
Thanks. There we go. Contract
You'll now
signed.
be knighted by Chris B.
Yeah, sword on each shoulder. There we go. So we've been going for a couple of hours now. I'll just hit a question or two very quickly. What happened to the big fins on the booster mini Dr. M thing? So Ian, very early in the Starship development timeline, we saw like about 6 or so fins right at the bottom of Super Heavy. There's now 3 small chines on Super Heavy. What's happening there?
Yeah, so originally they did have, I believe, 6 fins at the base of Super Heavy. Those were kind of going to double as landing gear, but also a bit of aerodynamic stabilization. Since SpaceX has moved to the chopstick method of catching the booster, because they want to minimize all the mass possible on the booster, those landing leg fins and any landing legs on the booster in general would just add extra mass, and extra mass means less payload to orbit. So they ended up just getting rid of those, and they hope to catch the booster on the chopsticks and then just set it right back down on the launch mount. No landing legs required. So that's what happened to those, and now we're here with the chopsticks.
And Mr. Biped asking, is Starship's cargo bay large enough to fit the Hubble Space Telescope into it? Sawyer, you were talking about HST earlier. Can we fit a Hubble into Starship?
I mean, it would need to have some kind of like opening nose cone, essentially, probably to get it to fit. We have already heard in the past that there are plans under consideration to use Dragon to try and recover Hubble and bring that back home. So it's not unheard of. There are plans being discussed actively regarding it, but I don't know if it would fit as is currently.
I do believe it would fit in Starship's payload bay, and I gotta say, it would be amazing to bring Hubble home. Go to the Smithsonian, grab some chicken nuggets, and go see Hubble in the Smithsonian. I think that would just be amazing to see. Humanity's largest space telescope at the time, in a museum. I'd love to see that.
And also that had multiple servicing missions to it as well. You had 5 missions going up there and improving it each time after the first one fixed its nearsightedness.
Yeah, I'd love to see it in a museum as well, especially a workhorse space telescope that's been up there for multiple decades now, giving us some incredible imagery of the life and stars beyond our own solar system. So that's going to do it for today's Starship update. Make sure that you keep an eye on the channel. This orbital flight test could be coming at any time next week, potentially looking at launch licenses. We'll keep you up to date as much as we can with all the information we have. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time, and goodbye.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
Our 68 chamber pressure looks good.
Following up.
God! Oh my God!
Décollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?